Hello and welcome to our latest Graham and Sibbald podcast episode. Today we are joined by some more incredible women from across the GNS team for our International Women's Day series. Today we are joined by Carole Latham, Rachel Murray, Natasha Dabhi, Aqsa Munir and Dafni Papadopoulou, who all work within the architectural department at Graham and Sibbald, ranging from student architect to director, covering the UK. Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Hello.
As there is a few of us on the podcast today, I think we should all start by a little general introduction to everyone on the call. So, Carole, do you want to kick us off?
Hello, I'm Carole Latham, Architect Director at the Manchester office and I've been with Graham and Sibbald for 18 months.
Hi, I'm Rachel Murray. I'm an associate in the Glasgow office and I've been with Graham and Sibbald for 2 years now.
Hi, I'm Aqsa. I'm in the Manchester office. I've been here for 9 months.
Hello, my name is Dafni. I work at the Manchester office as a Part 1 architectural assistant and I've been with Graham and Sibbald for the past 5 months.
Hello, I'm Natasha. I've been at Graham and Sibbald for a month. I'm in the Manchester office and I've joined as a senior architectural technician.
Perfect, thank you ladies. So for this podcast, rather than it being the style of Q&A, which we normally do on the GNS podcast, I'm going to leave it up to the ladies on the call to have a roundtable discussion about all things International Women's Day. Ladies, over to you.
Thanks, Jorja. We are really fortunate in our architecture team because we've already got quite a high level of diversity across a full spectrum of ages, skill sets and positions. So for us, that's a real keystone. It helps us shape the very best provision of service for our clients and all stakeholders that we're privileged enough to design with and design for. We firmly believe that architecture as a profession should be inclusive and it should be equitable. We're involved with placemaking and shaping the built environment on behalf of a diverse society. So we really feel as though we have to reflect that same diversity, bringing along a range of lived experiences. And then as a result of that, our critical thinking's improved because the quality of our early stage design process has really got something a little bit extra to it. And from a business perspective, it's just great for business. Why wouldn't you have an inclusive workforce that represents an ability to approach issues from all angles? If we feel that we have a wider set of backgrounds, it provides a wider set of insights beyond the status quo. So we think we're quite well positioned to innovate and keep pace with change. Now, I'm aware that that sounds great, doesn't it? But the reality is it's not quite as good as we want it to be at the moment. Not to say it couldn't be, but it isn't right now. So in the architecture profession, only 31% of all architects identify as female. But we know that 50% of all UK architecture students are female. So where are we losing that percentage of the cohort between starting their studies and finishing up in practice? Why is that happening? We do have certain questions here to be answered. When we get into intersections of ethnic minority representation, the percentages and the figures make for even worse reading. It's just awful. Whether that's Black British or Asian British, it's estimated to be well below 1% and 2% across the board. Construction architecture, we fall short on representation really across every single other diversity metric as well. So we're not just talking about female representation or ethnic minority, it's sexual orientation, class and religion as well. So we need to do better. We know that being female can present a tough challenge in the workplace or building sites, but also our cities and buildings can be more gendered environments as well, and possibly more challenging as a result. So whether that's a public transport system or a playground, as female architects, it's actually quite interesting that we can not only recognise those inequalities through our own lived experiences, but we can actually start to help decode some of those aspects of it and to work out what alternatives might look like for some of these infrastructures that can be quite alienating, but we all take for granted. So we thought it'd be really interesting for us as the architecture team and the female components of the architecture team to start reviewing what our experiences in architecture are as women and any other intersections. So over to you guys.
Well, my expectations are probably would be qualifying 30 years ago. You'd think I would have a back catalogue of negative experiences, but my experience has been very different. Maybe that's chance, maybe it's luck. I recall at a very young age, mid-20s, just freshly qualified, being told, I want to build the tallest building in the city, give the brief and make it happen. And I can assure you the chasm of that deep end loomed large as I plunged in there. But I was very fortunate with working with drivers in the industry who cared not for age, gender, background, but just trust and an alignment of vision. But that's not to say the industry hasn't always had its challenges. It still does, and very often you can still go on site and with your male colleague, and they are the interpreter for your situation. So you very quickly learn that, make yourself heard.
I think the only experience I've ever encountered was in an interview. I think that the employer actually asked me, when are you going to have children? I know. And if I was in a long-term relationship, so he could kind of think about how long I was gonna, timeline. And it was kind of like a shock, to be honest, obviously coming from a male. And he wanted someone that was going to be long-term, but it's kind of upsetting really, because why can't you as a woman be there long-term, so yeah, that's the only one I've had. Well, fortunately it's only been the one, but it shouldn't really happen.
Absolutely.
Well, listening to these stories, I feel very privileged that I have completed my studies in a university that really supports equality, diversity, and inclusion. So I have never really been myself in a situation where I have had to encounter bad behavior towards women or the gender in general. I have experienced some condescending comments and mansplaining in studio, not towards me, but towards other female students. But thankfully, they were targeted by our staff and accordingly treated. But hearing stories like this one just makes me scared that in the future I'm always threatened, and I'm always in the position of being encountered by such a situation. And I think that is very negative for women in general, because it might make me feel more scared to continue down my path as an architect. And obviously I've just started, but it's always a threat that is lurking.
My experience was I just had a male colleague talk through my design to a client because I wouldn't be taken seriously, and then if I'd correct something, my male colleague would have to repeat the same thing to be taken seriously. So yeah,
that's poor, isn't it? Where it's like you said, Rachel, the interpreter. I've had it even recently. I've been doing this job for 27 years, and sometimes in a new situation, you'll still have the man talk to the other man in the room. There we go. It's a shame, isn't it?
A lot of that comes down to, back again, is making sure you're heard, having the voice, but having the opportunity to. So I think it's improving. Over 30 years, I've seen an improvement, but
I think sometimes we've got some stories that kind of not quite in the Me Too area, but certainly in terms of being a young architect and having to conduct your site meetings in site cabins that have topless women calendars on the walls. It kind of makes it actually kind of quite an intimidating environment, which you say it out now and everyone's like, really? And kind of it's like, yeah, I'm afraid so. And it's only been, I'd say, in the last 10, 15 years that's now weeded out. But I get the impression that your generation is less willing to overlook that bad behaviour, which I think bodes well. So I think kind of that will eventually, I think, go the way it should in terms of bad behaviour.
I think as well, I think there was a certain amount of acceptance that you had to do to be one of the industry. You had to just buckle down, get on with it, and be one of the lads and get on with the job because you were in a male-oriented environment.
Yeah, it's good that has definitely gone away, I would say. We used to do site walk-rounds and get catcalled as we try and sort of do our site walk-rounds, which wasn't pleasant, and it does make you quite tough in a certain thing, but then you think, well, shouldn't really need to have that type of resilience, and it saps a lot of the energy that perhaps could be better used for other things. It's changing off the bear. We're now if we move from the past to the present, it might be quite interesting to talk about the defining points of your career so far then, kind of where are things going at the moment?
Mine's kind of, I don't want to say cliche, but graduating for me was a big moment because of like past challenges and stuff with family or just with school. So graduating was absolutely massive, especially in the industry, in architecture. And yeah, it was just amazing to come home with that degree and see my parents' face, sort of things. So yeah, it was a good moment.
I'm hoping that there's still many more defining moments to come. But I still find that the biggest thing, and each time it kind of supersedes because the memory's fresh and the experience is fresh, is that interface of what you bring in design to people that use it, or the people who react and interact with it. And the positive feedback that you get when you've finished a product or you've brought something out and people are actually starting to use it, and people are going, yeah, I really like this, I enjoy this works for me. That's very, very positive for me, and that defines in terms of what we do and what we're about.
So you're looking for that fix on a regular basis.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I think the first time seeing something that you designed come to life. So yeah, I designed a ceiling for a tile company, and just there was 1,500 panels, and then I had to individually do them panels, and then just seeing the whole sculpture come together. That was a moment for me. Yeah,
that translation of something that had started life on the drawing board,
just the concept,
gone through the stages, and then wow, it's there.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for you.
Yeah, so that was.
I think kind of in terms of where we are now as females in architecture or the construction industry or the property industry, it kind of feels as though we've got to continually keep pace with not resting on our laurels as well, and making sure that every single year we're thinking about how we can improve things. So in terms of activism as well, kind of, are we doing enough to maintain a bit of momentum, to drive change? So what's everyone doing there with regards to improving the workplace and professional spaces and bringing other people up behind us, as it were?
Well, previously, I've actually attended schools. Luckily, they had a class in construction, so they had to do it as compulsory. But it was really, really nice because we got to present to them and help them through work, and also just encourage them in construction and design. And that was also females, females were there, and it's nice for them to actually understand what architecture is, because I think, from a young age, you don't really understand. Some children aren't exposed to that, so they don't really get a wider understanding of, well, what could it be, or could I even go into that? From a young age, you're kind of influenced from parents. So if they don't know anything about architecture, you're never really going to learn about it. So it's nice to educate them that it is fun. There's design there, there's problem solving there. There's so much to it. So it's nice. I think it starts from a young age. I really do think it's from like setting them up, really. So that's good.
I don't know, just if somebody's struggling in the office, just being there for them, just helping each other out.
A collaborative environment.
Well, it's like you'll look over and you'll see somebody struggling, rather than just allowing them to struggle through a problem. You just help each other out and support each other.
That's good. I like that. I think kind of for me, it feels as though where I would like to do more, put more of my efforts is at a grassroots level. So making sure that within our team, I can let more diverse voices be heard. To me, that feels like a powerful driver of change. So the more opportunity and the more support that I can provide you to create space for you guys to find your own voice and to find your direction in architecture and construction, it feels as though that's the best thing that I could do to help support the female cause and bringing more people up and through the ranks. I know that I'm always striving on that one, and plenty more work to be done there.
I think it goes back to, again, is giving a voice and making sure that round about you are heard, because the more diverse and more voices input, we're working in an industry that's very, very reactive to diversity, input, real life influences. So as much of that we can put in, as much of it comes back out.
So if you were going to go back in time and meet your younger self, Rachel, at the start of your career, what advice would you give?
Probably to be louder, because I think that it's like you say, you are brought up in that kind of, and it is 30 plus years, it's 30 years exactly next month since I first qualified. 30 years ago in the industry was quite different. It was very male orientated, and you did come out you were relatively quiet and you got the edges knocked off you, shall I say, and you became one of the lads, you became a wee bit vocal. And it's not until you get so many years under your belt in that kind of industry that you think, I'm just going to say it, I'm just putting it out there, I'm just doing it, and you know what I mean? But you think, I should have done that earlier, I should have done that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and just come out and said, what in there? I'm just doing it, get out there, do it, give yourself a much more of a voice, make yourself heard.
Good advice. That's good advice. What would you do, Aqsa?
Not take criticism to heart. It's just people that criticise your design, it's to improve your design. I think that like, first year when I was studying, that and just clients' feedback in terms of their criticism. It's not to do with it's not to do with your skills. It's more to do with improving what you're trying to design for somebody. Yeah,
that's good.
Well, being just in the beginning, as I've mentioned, I think that the most important thing that I learned in school and that I want to implement in my practice is that everybody has their own style, and it's very nice to embrace it. It ties up very nicely to what we mentioned about everybody bringing their different experiences in the practice. So in architecture, it's very easy to fall in the rabbit hole of comparing yourself or your artwork or your ways of representation to others. And I believe that this is easy to do as well with our practices, like different buildings and different themes in our buildings. So it's important to remember that we are our own individuals and that we have unique characters and styles, and especially with women, because there were centuries that we were just an extension of our families, of our husbands, of our brothers, or male characters in our surroundings. It is crucial to inspire people into implementing our uniqueness in the world, much more in the architectural industry.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And if we're going to sort of talk about that industry and how we do move things forward, where do you think the profession can improve?
I think I'm going to repeat myself from the previous question, actually, because I think it all starts from a younger age. Motivating younger people, younger adults, and just getting the education out there of what architecture really is. I think talking to children, teenagers, just anyone who wants to know about it. I think, yeah.
I think if you can't see it, you can't be it, can you? So you've got to get out there and do that schools outreach and inspire that younger generation that is a viable career option for them.
Yeah,
that's great.
Seeing women in positions of authority and leadership is very inspiring, especially when you're young and ambitious. It really makes you thrive and give your whole self in order to achieve that, because you feel it's achievable. Right now, women place mental barriers into what they can do, not because somebody implements it on them, but rather because they feel that because there's nobody they know that does it, they can't do it. So it's very important to show what women are capable of, that they're capable of leadership, of ideas, of design, of concept, while at the same time helping with more practical issues that we have. For instance, the pay gap that exists and nobody wants to address, or the flexibility that women don't have when they're on maternity leave, or with female health, that it differentiates itself from male one. So we need to address the practical issues so that we can move forward within our ideas and our concepts in architecture.
Nice, I like that. Okay. And if we're going to start thinking then about how we can let the profession kind of know a little bit more about where we feel it needs to be making efforts, and that's whether that's in the architecture or the workplace. If we're going to widen that back out again to the skill sets we have as architects and designers, how do we think we can start to apply that learning back into cities, spaces, buildings? What does an equitable city look like?
Well, it's a difficult one because fully equitable means it's accessible, security, shelter, transport. It meets the needs of everybody, which is quite difficult to do. But I think first and foremost, again, that complex challenge, it needs to reflect back to like community engagement. we're saying only so many women are represented through to our industry. We have to be their voice then. There's X number of percentage women who are still out there who need their voice to be heard and reflected back through the design, etc., and what we actually address into architecture and planning these days as well. So we need to reflect that back into it, understand it, engage with it, listen to their voices, hear what they're saying, find out what the needs are. We can't really second guess needs. You can't design, you can't create in a vacuum. You need to reflect what the actual true needs are.
I think we're starting to see some of those models, though, that things that were more alternative and on the fringes when we started, we're now seeing where this is coming through as much more mainstream accepted lines of thought now. So Glasgow City Council, for example, had a cross-party declaration in 2023 that declared itself a feminist city for town planning. That's a game changer, because what that means is that all future town planning decisions are going to now be taken with feminism at heart. Actually, that translates to so much more. It's a recognising that feminism in urban design overlaps to many other areas of social, spatial justice. It promotes inclusivity, it promotes access, it promotes diversity for the city being free for all and accessible for all. So if we're looking at creating better public spaces, and whether that's street lighting, wider pavements, more accessible public toilets, open green spaces that have circular walkways, no hidden spots, things where we're not going to feel threatened, spaces to be in within the public realm, it's really clear to see that that's not just going to be great for young women and girls and older women, that's going to be great for everyone. If you're in a wheelchair and you've got a wider pavement, if you've got accessible toilets, that you've got the parents that have got the kids in the stroller. I mean, it's really easy to see how taking things with a feminist account kind of will automatically overlap to many other areas. There's another great organisation as well called Make Space for Girls. That idea of sort of getting girls involved in that decision making that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
They campaign for equal access to public parks and play spaces for girls and young women. So the idea is they can provide resources to the public sector. They'll engage with developers. They'll engage with architects. They show you best practice from around the world in the UK. And critically, and this is the really important part that you were saying there, Rachel, they show you how to engage with girls, with young women, how to promote skills outreach. So you are getting that lived experience come back. You're getting people that are engaged in the design process through a female perspective, which will always deliver better spaces across the board. Yeah.
I think it's one of these things that you can read, you can study, you can learn, you can identify, but actually when you have somebody who, and that end user group that you're looking at in front of you, and they're feeding back very much lived experience and requirements, it's incredible how much you learn from that. It's incredible that engagement, how much that can inform and enrich design.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's very important that there is a case study such as Glasgow that we can actually see it being created in real life, and that must mean that a city that is equitable is non-discriminative. So it needs to be seamless into how we navigate through it and how women or people with disabilities can access it. So the fact that we have to question whether a city is equitable or not, it means that we haven't achieved that level yet in our urban design.
That's right.
So instead of having the idea, which really reoccurs sometimes in architecture, that the architect is separate and the people that they design for are separate, we need to kind of merge it and ensure that we know what the needs of women are currently, so what we need to target and make specific designs for it, rather than design in theory and then create what we think is pleasing aesthetically or in our idea that's a good urban design, whereas it might practically not have any service at all. So I believe that making the city equitable means that we don't have to question whether we can walk through somewhere or access some place. It gives equal opportunities.
I think again though, as designers, that's where we have to bring our skills to the table, because bringing that kind of equity can make the mundane, it can make the monotone. We have to bring in the vitality, the vivacity as designers into that equation as well though, and that's where our challenge lies.
It's about interpretation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of what we do. We're in such a lucky job, aren't we? It's what's really nice is that you all share the same passion for architecture, and we think it's great because it is about that, looking at a site, looking at a building, and you start with a blank piece of paper, and then you bring on all these different stakeholders. So you've got the end users have got something to offer. The building tells you sort of a story as well. You're looking at the context. We look at climate change. We look at how we think, and if the client's needs need to be met, and how we bring all of those things together. It's like weaving this beautiful tapestry.
Speaking of cake,
It's great. There we go.
Cherry on the top.
We've gone for, if you notice, we've gone for tapestry and cake making. We've gone for really sort of gender obvious stereotypes. So you brought cake.
I was going to say, I'm thinking about the cake.
Natural segue into one of our kind of lovely questions here, which I really like. If you could have dinner with 3 inspirational women, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
I think mine are Michelle Obama, and my sister-in-law, Peter Mystery, and Malala. For all 3 of them, I think they all are so driven, and they want to promote, like, don't be afraid to speak up and fight for what's right. So my sister-in-law is literally the same, and Michelle does so much for women in Africa and girls in Africa to try and get them into schools, because again, it's that gender. It's the same with like going back home to India. It's always for the male side. It's never for the women. The women are known to be cooking at home and looking after. So she always tries to promote, girls can go to school, and we're going to build that. My sister-in-law's the same. She's an advocate for women. She wants to like strive for the best all the time. And same for Malala. She fought for women in her country for education. So yeah, all 3 are just driven and inspiring.
Good answer.
Mine would be Yasmin Lawry. She's a Pakistani architect, and she built shelters there was a devastating flood in Pakistan that left lots of people homeless, and then she created a method where people use local materials to build a shelter that could later, when the water receded, they created foundations for them and they could build homes with them shelters. And she empowered the poorest people in Pakistan to use architecture and build for themselves. She taught them the methods to do that. So yeah, she's one of mine that I'd like to have dinner with.
I have many women that I really admire. I think the list is endless, and it's good that they're being promoted now. So one of them is Katherine Johnson, who was the Apollo 11 mathematician. And not only was she one of the first women to be promoted in STEM, but she also fought racial inequality by being a member of NASA when being a Black woman was forbiddable for even going out and shopping, not being a mathematician in such a high position. So I really admire her for what she did. Then another character is an ancient Greek woman who was named Kallipateira from Rhodes, and she was the first woman to attend the Olympic Games, although it was forbidden at the time. But she was allowed to live because she stood by her beliefs and rights, and because her whole family had Olympic winners, she could not resist the urge to be there for her son when he was competing. So it was kind of a game changer, even though they didn't immediately allow women back into the stadiums. It was one pioneering moment in that time. And I think it's cliche again, but my mom has really inspired me to become the woman I am, because she was also a woman in STEM. She, despite the adversities that she faced in Greece years back when the industry was different, she was also a woman in STEM, and she completed her PhD in string theory, and she represented the Athens University in other countries such as the USA universities and European universities, which I really find inspiring, because if we don't get the inspiration from our family, where else will we get it?
This is a tricky one, isn't it? Kind of, it's because we're all aware of how many amazing women there are, and I think kind of you guys have sort of already sort of pretty much covered a lot of ground there. I'm a bit of a here and now person, so I'm going to ask, can I invite 3 of my best female pals over for a kitchen disco instead of dinner? I'm a working mum to 3 teenagers, as well as being an architect and a director. So social situations with friends are an absolute treasured event. I find the women that I work with, live with, and socialise with, that they are my inspiration. So we support each other. We talk about life, work, motherhood, politics, clothes. They're my treasured network. They really are. That said, I reckon Vivienne Westwood would have some good stories to tell. And I reckon she'd enjoy one of my kitchen discos as well.
I'm with you on that one. There was too many to choose from, and I ended up looking at thinking, well, it would be quite flip, but it's things like Mary Queen of Scots, because I'm a history buff, and I just want to go back and see what actually happened and what was it like, and what did you do, and how did you actually live, and what were the buildings like, and all the rest of it. So there's so many questions that I think that are in that kind of eras that are not documented. But again, going back to what you said, family probably would be my nana, who was ultimately said to me all the way through as I was way up, do you want to do, be self-sufficient, don't rely on others, and just live the dream. And that always comes back and filters into my head, and it's that kind of strong woman in your background to make you what you are in terms of the future.
Good advice. Yeah.
Is that everyone?
That's us.
Yay! Thank you, guys. I think that will be really eye-opening to a lot of people and empowering as well. I think, Carole, you said if you can't be it, you won't see it, and you guys are fixing that, so you should be really proud. Thank you so much for coming on the pod today.
Bye.
I think we can all agree that was an excellent episode. Thanks again to Carole, Rachel, Natasha, Aqsa and Dafni for all of their wonderful insights and words of wisdom today. For more information and to view the full range of services offered by the Graham and Sibbald architectural team, please visit our website at www.g-s.co.uk. Thanks for listening. Until next time, you can catch up on all our latest podcast episodes via the playlist on our YouTube channel. See you next time.